Hey, so I'm back home now, and I have a lot of things I want to go over. I'm still a bit ill, but it's not that bad. Number one, what I want to talk about is now that we know that the Fed is going to cut interest rates on September 18th, which unironically is the exact same time that they cut interest rates during the GFC cycle, quite literally to the exact date in the year, September 18th, 2024, which when the GFC began, they cut the interest rates for the first time on September 18th, 2007. But the first thing I want to address here is people point towards, well, they've been cutting rates a few times and it's led to soft landings. Right. I want to make something very clear in regards to that. That is true. Objectively speaking, looking at the chart, there has been two soft landings here. But there's a twist. And the twist is that the yield curve had not inverted prior to those two times where they were cutting interest rates. And I'm talking about the mid 1990s. There's no gray zone here. And again, a shaded area would indicate US recessions. And same thing in the mid 1980s. But if you go back and we look here and we check what happened before the pandemic, you can blame this on the virus. It doesn't matter. There was a gray zone here. Did the yield curve invert before that? Yes, it was briefly inverted right here. Not by a lot. The 10-year 3 months is more visible, right? But it did invert. And in fact, just to do this, I'll bring it up for you. 10-3 Fred. You can see it here prior to C19, it was inverted here. So that one was predicted by the bond market that there was going to be a recession. What about the GFC, the global financial crisis? Was the yield curve inverted before that? Yes. Did it predict the recession? Absolutely. What about the one before the dot-com bubble? Did it predict that one? Absolutely. Here they were cutting rates in 1995, and it was a soft landing. Unemployment rate did not go up, and there's no gray bar, meaning no recession. But was the yield curve inverted in the mid 1990s? Nope, not at any point around here when they were lowering rates here in 1995. What about this example? In going into 1990, was the yield curve inverted here in 1989? Yes, so it predicted that one as well. Okay, here's another example of a soft landing in the mid 1980s. They were lowering interest rates. Was the yield curve inverted in the mid 1980s? Nope, not at any point here. Alright, what about right here when they were lowering interest rates in 1981? Had the yield curve been inverted just prior to that? Absolutely. It was inverted right here. Alright, and it's a back-to-back recession. In 1980, had the yield curve been inverted? Absolutely. And this is as far back as this data goes, okay? If you want to keep going back, you have every single example here where this is the case. Some people would point towards, okay, here's another one, right, where it inverted and we got a recession. Here's another example where it inverted and we got a recession when they started cutting rates. Right here we didn't. Now, the S&P 500 still went down by 25%. And inflation adjusted, like I've gone over before, technically the unemployment rate didn't go up, right? So inflation adjusted, you still had a bear market decline in the S&P 500, but you didn't really make money for, from 1966 till 2009, 43 years, inflation adjusted. This is what it looks like on a nominal chart, right? There was so much inflation during the mid 1960s to early 1980s that this bear market decline was about a 75% decline inflation adjusted in real terms. And so this is point number one I want to go over. I'm going to open my Twitter because I've tweeted a lot of things recently. And also I just want to show you a picture real quick. Do you honestly think, I mean, just look at this. This is the 1990 recession. You can see the unemployment rate started going up. Oh, recession. That's the green zone. Started going up here. Oh, recession. That's the dot-com recession. Started going up. Oh, recession. The global financial crisis. Started going up. Well, that was a spike. That was COVID. Whatever. If you want to blame it on an artificial shutdown, there was the recession, regardless. Well, here it's creeping up, and it's doing the exact same thing as here. Look when the recession began here. When did the green zone appear? Well, it's probably gonna appear somewhere around here in the future, right? Now I want to go over this. There's a lot of things I want to go over. Americans are worried about losing their job. As I googled here, Americans worried about losing their jobs. CNN: more and more Americans are worried they will lose their job. Market Watch: American workers haven't been this worried about losing their job for a long time. The New York Times: warning signs flash in a labor survey as Fed officials something something. Yahoo Finance: more and more Americans are worried they will lose their job. Several Fed officials were ready to cut interest rates in July. Minutes show a September cut is now teed up. FOMC is more worried about the labor market. Yeah, and then we had revisions here of 818,000, so this means that they were lying to you about 818,000 jobs, and this is what they're admitting to right now. They're gonna do revisions on the revisions. We've been talking about this for a long time, how, again, like their numbers are bullshit, okay? And it's this way every single time. And look what they were saying back then, February 2007. Bernanke, the Fed chair at the time, sees no recession. And that was February 27, 2008. That's like 3-4 months into the recession. Bernanke says US could be facing a mild recession. No, it was the worst recession since the Great Depression, April 10th, 2008. Here's another problem with the CPI calculation. What does it say here? The index for shelter, I went to the BLS report and I read it. The index for shelter rose 0.4% in July, accounting for nearly 90% of the monthly increase. Well, what is contributing towards the shelter increase? It's owner's equivalent rent. You can see it here, measuring price change in the CPI rent and rental equivalents. Is one of the largest parts of the CPI market basket. It used to be 24%, now it's 36%. It is owner's equivalent rent, OER. Owner's equivalent rent is the hypothetical rent homeowners would pay if they weren't homeowners, or the hypothetical rent they forego by not renting out their property. And was said by an economist with the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Measuring changes in hypothetical rent is tough, he said. To do that, the BLS tracks 40,000 actual rental properties and then does some fancy math. It's hypothetical rent. It asks homeowners what they would rent their property out for. So they call these people up and they ask them, hey, how much do you think you could rent your home out for? And they just give a random number and they're like, oh, we're just going to plug it into the CPI. And as you can see here, it accounted for 90% of the monthly increase in the CPI, right? So why would they state a higher than um, real inflation rate, right? Because this is the actual inflation rate. Truflation reported higher inflation in 2022 when the BLS reported 9.1% in June of 2022. I think Truflation had something like 14 or 15%, whereas right now it's 1.35%. So you might go, well, uh, why would they lie about higher inflation? It's because if you know that your money is going to be worth less tomorrow, or if you believe that, then you're going to go out and spend, which is good for the economy. So like I wrote here, they can literally make the CPI look higher than it actually is. Check Trueflation. Why would the government report on higher inflation? So you keep spending. You saw it with your own words how much the speculative OER, owner's equivalent rent, impacts it. If you keep spending, that's good for the economy. If you know your money will be worth more in the future because of deflation, then it may even wait longer with making a purchase, which leads to prices falling even further, equals a deflationary spiral. Do you get it? I'm not even talking deflation from Q1 2020 levels, I'm talking year over year. Okay? What else did I tweet here? I wrote here, it's a long thread. I'm gonna go over all of this. QE is not the same as the CARES Act. They're very different types of stimulus. When you do QE, quantitative easing, which is what everyone thinks of when they think of Powell turning on the money printer, which is not quite literally printing money, you're partly buying treasuries on the open market from non-bank entities. They're buying treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, but let's focus on this, right? Treasuries from non-bank entities, meaning private people like you and me, or individuals rather, right? And so in this example, this means that the seller gets cash and the Fed gets your treasury. Yeah? And so the M2 money supply increases, but again, the people who have treasuries are less likely to go out and spend it in the real economy. You're more likely to go and maybe buy assets or something with it, right? Which makes it less stimulative for the economy. Because yeah, you can buy assets, but that's not going to stimulate the economy by itself. Whereas if you go through with the CARES Act program, the stimulus checks which you did in 2020, you now give the money in 2021, you now give the money to the people who are likely to go out and spend it instead of just buying assets with it, like the people who sell their treasuries on the open market to the Fed. Checks equals effective, Q equals not. Okay? The Fed will panic due to a parabola in the unemployment rate chart. Rip all job enjoyers. U3, my prediction is 8 to 12% end of cycle. U6, 15 to 20% end of cycle. This is the actual unemployment rate, right? Which is currently up at 7.8%. Difference between U3 and U6 is that U3, it's the national unemployment rate. U6 is the way they calculated it before the mid 1990s. And what is the difference between the two? Well, again, if you have a job, or if you don't have a job, if you can't find a job for 12 months or more, you drop out of U3, but you stay in U6. If you drive for Uber for 1 hour a week, you drop out of U3, but you stay in U6. So that's the actual unemployment rate. This will be fun to watch. They couldn't control inflation, yet you expect them to control the labor market. Rate hikes won't do anything to slow down the unemployment rate rise for at least 2 years. Study history. This is how the GFC cycle played out. Rates went from 1% to 5.25% in June 2004 till June 2006. In January 2006, the yield curve inverts. It predicts a recession, as in a rise in unemployment rate within 6 to 24 months, which will lead to a GDP contraction. In May 2007, the unemployment rate bottoms. September 18th was the first, in 2007 was the first rate cut. October 11th, 2007, the the S&P 500 tops. December 2008, rates hit zero and QE begins. And in December 2008, they announced that the recession began in December 2007, 12 months prior. In March 2009, the S&P 500 bottoms, and in October 2009, the unemployment rate peaks. Here is a link to MBR, if you want to read that as well, where they announced it. I think stocks will bottom Q1 2026 and unemployment peaks Q4 2026. Might be off by a quarter, we'll see. The Fed can't save you, you are fucked. Okay? Again, it's simple. I've shown these pictures before. The red line is where we are now, the orange line was the GFC path. Okay? Here's where the unemployment rate is headed. It's gonna probably double over the next 12 months. And why is that so bad? Well, again, if you have less people with jobs, you have less consumers, which hurts corporate earnings, right? Which leads to more layoffs. And that also changes the psychology. If people know that they're going to lose their job, and if they're worried about it, well, what does that do? We'll go back to this one in a sec. But it goes back to my other tweet right here. Where is it? People were concerned about losing their jobs. Here. People are going to be concerned about losing their jobs. So what do you think these people are going to be doing? Um, Layoffs remain low, but workers' expectations that they could become unemployed are the highest since 2014. The problem with that is that these people are going to try and cut back on spending, right, to prepare for something in case they lose their jobs, right? So that's going to lead to even less spending in the economy, which is very bad because now you're going to get earnings contraction. It's going to lead to more layoffs, and eventually you can get into deflation. You can get into a deflationary spiral. And since 70% of the US economy is the consumer, it's going to lead to a GDP contraction. So if you have rising unemployment and a GDP contraction, that's a textbook recession. Going back to this picture, foreclosures are also on the rise. I mean, like, does this look good? Rising unemployment, the blue line is the GFC cycle, red line is where we are today. Let's go back to what else I tweeted here. Revisions for retail sales. Looks completely normal, guys. Just like with GDP and everything else that they're lying about. Some guy here wrote in. Wait, where is it? I think it's in here. This guy tweeted here. After the first rate cut September 18, 2007, S&P fell roughly 54% in the next 372 days, and unemployment rate rose another 5.3%. The guy goes, now do September 95. I replied with, the yield curve was not inverted in the mid-1990s. How do we know that? It was not inverted here. It was not inverted there, which means no recession. So they could cut rates, right? Which they did. No recession, right? The yield curve is indirectly correct here because they didn't predict a recession. Same thing in the mid 1980s. The bull market always knows if a crash is coming or not. It didn't back then, and it was indirectly correct once again. Respect the yield curve, most severely and deeply inverted curve since 1929. And I also wrote this because some guy goes like, yeah, but well, he's actually got to watch his videos. He might watch this as well. But he said something like, "You've been talking about it for a long time. Eventually, you're gonna be correct. Now it seems like you're correct. Whatever. It's not really about me. I want to make this clear. Yeah, I know everything is gonna play out. I know the unemployment rate will go up. I know it's gonna lead to a GDP contraction. I know the stock market will go down. I don't know how much it will go down. I don't know exactly when it bottoms. Doesn't tell us that. The average S&P 500 decline is 35% in recession. But there's nothing average about this one. I think minus 50% to 70% in between the 2022 lows and the COVID lows, and or down to the COVID lows or just below the COVID lows is where I think the S&P 500 is going. But anyways, what I wrote here, it has very little to do with me, um, but more so about the bond market. I'm just simply explaining to people what the inverted yield curve signifies, why it inverts, and why it was going to be right again. The yield curve is a leading economic indicator. Some people go like, yeah, but you've been talking about shit for years. It's a leading economic indicator, and I've been talking about this for the longest time. It predicts a recession within 6 to 24 months. And it warned of the unemployment rate rise, which when it occurred, right, the inversion in July or October of 2022, July for the 10-year 2-year and for the 10-year 3 months in October 2022, and the unemployment rate bottomed April 2023. It was right, and now the unemployment rate is rising. It's a lagging indicator, which leads to recession. The unemployment rate is a lagging indicator. To put it into perspective, this is how the GFC played out. In January 2006, the yield converts. May 2007, unemployment rate bottoms. September 18, 2007, first rate cut. October 2007, SPX tops. March 2009, SPX bottoms. October 2009, unemployment rate peaks. So it took 45 months for the whole process to play out from yield curve inversion to unemployment rate peaking. It's because of this that people doubt, but it's always correct. So far, July and October 2022, the yield curve inverts. 10-year 2-year in July and 10-year 3-month in October of 2022. In April 2023, the unemployment rate bottoms. September 18th, 2024, exact same date, exactly 17 years later, they cut rates, or they're going to cut rates. When does the S&P top? I don't know. When does the S&P bottom? I don't know. When does the unemployment rate peak? I don't know. I said it before and I'll say it again. The credit goes to the yield curve, the bond market. It has very little to do with me. It has very little to do with me being right or wrong, and it has everything to do with the consistent track record of the bond market and understanding why it's always right. The reason why I care about it is because 50% is 50% of the reason why I care about it is macroeconomics, and it's something I'm extremely interested in. 30% is risk management, because you might not see your money for a very long time if you get wrong footed there. And 20% is because I'm seeking opportunity in a crisis. There's also a huge opportunity cost to going back to break even if you roll as us because you're missing out on compounding interest, right? So all of these reasons, that's why I care about it so much, right? And so also wrote something here. Less jobs equal less spending equals less 401k contributions, that as well, which is less liquidity going towards buying assets. Less stimulation in the economy equals earnings contract, more job losses, which leads to people cutting back on spending to protect themselves in case they may lose their job. Equals problems get worse, equals GDP contracts, 10% of the economy is the consumer. This guy says, but they really like to use the printer these days. So it seems like we see a massive boom bust cycles now. Recessions have been deleted until the final recession actually occurs. I said there's no such thing as the printer. When they do QE, it's giving money to the people owning treasuries. It's a very ineffective way to expand the money supply with the desired outcome that they're actively seeking, which is stimulation in the economy. Lowering interest rates, because again, that normally goes towards purchasing assets. Lowering interest rates equals long-term bullish after 12 to 24 months. In QE1 began on December 2008. The S&P 500 went down 25% from there. QE4, QE Infinity, March 15, 2020. 20% down in S&P 500. And then in Japan in March 2001, minus 50% for 8 years. In all examples, the market fell minus 20% to 50% further even after Q began. And like I said before, when quantitative easing was first introduced by the Bank of Japan, to fight domestic deflation early 2000s. The Bank of Japan had maintained short-term interest rates at close to zero since 1999. The Bank of Japan had for many years, in the states February 2001, stated that quantitative easing is not effective and rejected its use for monetary policy. Because it's all about who you give the money to. Right? And here are some more revisions, by the way, if you want to continue seeing, you know, the data is very clear. They're just revising it all the time. So you can sit here and say everything is fine. It's not fine. It's really bad. You shouldn't trust anything. People will go like, oh, but the GDP numbers are good. They're not good. You may think they are right now, but watch them revise it. It might say, well, what revisions? Where is that? Um, I guess I have to go into Discord. Let's scroll up my Discord. How do you know? They might say, yeah, but that's still anecdotal evidence. No, it's absolutely not. Like I brought up here too. So in the dot-com recession, 2% growth number revised down to 1.2% contraction. And here they revised a number rather than growing 0.6% as it previously reported. They sharply revised to a contraction of 0.2%. Right, just like they're revising the jobs numbers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has made their largest downward revision to the jobs number in 15 years. Oh, another data point that points towards, guess what, 2008, 2009. They're lying about everything. Another thing, look at this. GDP, GDI, output of economic growth predictor Fed. GDP, GDI, Fed. Here. I've shown this before as well. You can read this yourself if you want to. In 2016, the Fed wrote this, and the question is better measure of output, GDP or GDI? So gross domestic product versus gross domestic income. And GDI leads GDP. And I'm going to try and see if I can bring up a chart. Yeah, here. I'm unable to access this site. Alright. Guess I'll have to bring up a new picture. I don't know, I can't enter the site that had the link. I don't know, whatever. I'll just do this, okay? I know it's really bad quality. I'm not sure if there's a better picture here with better quality. Trying to find GDP versus GDI comparison. Whatever, we're just gonna have to look at this. Oh, I guess this is good. So in blue, we have GDI, and in red we have GDP. No, it's actually the opposite. GDP in blue in this example, and GDI in red. Which one predicted the global financial crisis? GDI. GDI was leading in red. All right. Well, what has been happening here? GDP has been going up, right? While GDI has been going down. Right, because they can just revise that like they always do. You can see the divergence here, which is why the Fed came to this conclusion that GDI is a better measure of output than GDP. I guess we have a picture of it here as well, actually. Um, so I think I went over most of the points here in this video so far. It's just gonna be fun to watch these people find out how things aren't good and it's not gonna get better, and the unemployment rate will start to spike over the next 12 months. It's gonna go absolutely parabolic. I mean, you'll see the unemployment rate will double from here in 12 months, and the Fed is not gonna be able to save you. They cut rates every time. It doesn't stop unemployment rate from spiking. I don't know. You know, in 2022 they were saying unemployment won't go up. In 2023 they were saying it will stop here. In 2024 they're saying it won't go up much more. And in 2025 they're going to say we have it under control, guys, just like with inflation. No, they don't. They're pathetic policymakers. Or maybe they know what they're doing. They're just doing it intentionally, you know? Trying to cause a crisis. Like I've said it before, uh, it's almost as if they're trying to repeat the exact, no, not even trying. It is quite literally the exact same thing as back then. Oh, I want to show another thing, by the way. In regards to the rate hikes, the cuts, and the pause in between as well, right? And you can even see it on this picture, right? The hike rates, they hiked them way more aggressively in 16 months from 0% to 5.5%. Over here it was from 1% up to 5.25% in 24 months. Here we did it in 16 months. Here there's 3.5 times more debt in the system. Here they paused for 15 months. Here they're going to pause for 14 months. Yield conversion, same period. At this point, unemployment rate starts to go up. At this point, unemployment rate starts to go up. They're going to cut rates. They're going to just like the cut rates there. That led to the Great Recession. What will this be? So this is the best part, right? People go like, yeah, but everything is fine because the stock market is up. Well, in 1928, the US economy started to cool with unemployment up as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to 5.5% like today in 2024. And the Wall Street economy disconnected from the real economy as speculators couldn't buy enough stock with leverage till one day in 1929.
The American economy as a whole had begun to cool starting in 1928, and the Wall Street economy disconnected from the underlying real economy and became a speculative bubble. And this fueled this speculation that just took off and took off and took off until, again, one day somebody woke up and said, this has gone too far. There's an old story about Bernard Baruch.
Oh, this was on anything like today. I know this is gonna be so bad. Only thing is, oh man, it's gonna be so bad. It's actually extremely tragic, and there's nothing they can do to prevent this. They can't do anything. It's it's inevitable. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they're gonna cut rates. It's not gonna do anything. Just like rate hikes didn't do anything for 2 years. It will do something 1.5 to 2 years after, yeah. But man, good luck.